what maybe led you to become a founder from your previous design background. Could you tell a bit more about that?
Is that to truly make impact, it's not about designing things for the customers, but how does it link back to the business?
What parts of your design background do you still use in your daily routine as a CEO of the company of TheyDo?
Every company has a way across these three stages, right? We used to call it, or we still call it, the triple diamond, right? It's design thinking plus delivery. So 3 diamonds: problem discovery, solution delivery.
I love this triple diamond framework.
Welcome to Growth Mates. This is Kate Suma, Growth Advisor, previously Head of Growth Design at Mira. Here you can learn how companies like Dropbox, Adobe, Canva, Loom, and many more are building excellent products and growth culture. Get all episodes and a free playbook for growth teams on our brand new website, growthmates.club. Have you ever wondered why some people start using the product but never come back after the first session? The problem is that they can't easily uncover the value that your entire team has been working hard on. We created a course intended to help you design the most valuable onboarding experience. The course is filled with best practices we gathered from over 80 companies and frameworks that will help you uncover improvements in your onboarding, run user research, and create a fresh roadmap of new experiments. The new cohort starts already on the 2nd of September, and for dear listeners, we provide a discount of €100 with the promo code GrowthMates. I would like to interact with each participant directly, and this is why we are collecting a small group of only 25 participants. You can find the link in the episode description. I would appreciate if you could also share it with someone who can find this valuable.
Hello, Jochem. Welcome to Growth Mates. How are you doing today?
Hey, Kate. I'm doing good. Thank you. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Absolutely. My pleasure to have you here. My pleasure to talk to somebody from Amsterdam. Finally, we are enjoying good weather here. And thanks for joining, definitely. You've been on my list for a while, especially as a person who has started in design background and then transitioned to building your own company. I'm always curious to learn from you folks. How do you end up doing these decisions, and what maybe led you to become a founder from your previous design background? Could you tell a bit more about that?
Sure. I think design is always, especially like if you work in a company, is always about the business, right? And we tend to forget that. So as a designer, I've been a UX practitioner for years, and then started doing service design, so applying UX to a systemic level of the organization. But what we found, and when I say we, like I ran a strategic design firm for many years before starting the product company, is that to truly make impact, it's not about designing things for the customers, right? It's not about only thinking about what's their value, what's their needs, how to create something for them, but how does it link back to the business? And that is really, really hard to do at scale. You can be lucky, you can have an isolated project, but to design a way of working around this, impacting business and customer, is incredibly hard to do at scale. So that led us, and especially me, to figure out like what would be the best way to do this. And ultimately what we landed on, like the customer journey being the context to have everyone align against and bring all the data together. I'm sure we'll go into that later today. But once we had that idea, we started designing a software solution rather than being consultants with a method. And that is actually like how designers work. It's like, can we make it better? Can we try to change the way a company works, rather than can we only design solutions for the end customer? At least that was, for me, the most important thing to do.
This is awesome. And it reminds me like some other folks who transitioned from design to founders who have been on this podcast. They shared that basically first you're designing the solution, then you may be designing the team, but at some point you would like to design an organization and the whole ecosystem. But the same principles or the same mindset can be applied to like larger scale. So maybe in your case, what parts of your design background do you still use in your daily routine as a CEO of the company of TheyDo?
So the principles you mentioned are still the same, and it depends on how you look at it. Like, am I designing an organization? Am I designing a feature? Am I designing some piece of content? But it's really about, okay, who's this for? What's the problem? what is the business impact we're creating? Why does the business care about it? Why does the customer care about it? So all like that problem discovery stage, like that's where it all starts, right? And it starts usually with the business. Like, hey, the data is not where we want it to be. What's going on? Why is this the way it is? Like, we're really good at understanding what and how much and when, but not why. So uncovering the why is where typically designers come in to help uncover that, right? In the discovery stages and doing research and analyzing the data before we move into like, okay, now we have an opportunity that we actually feel confident about, might be able to address what the customer needs and what the business needs. And then you move into the second stage of the process, which is basically like, how are we going to solve it? What is the solution? What is the ideal solution? How can we actually do it? And then once we have validated those, we think about bringing it together back to the business, back to reality. What can we do? I mean, we have so many solution prioritization methods nowadays, right? From RISE to something very sophisticated to like impact effort, whatever you use is about like, what can we do? How can we create impact? And then solution delivery starts. And this is the thing that we figured out is that, sure, every company has a way across these three stages, right? We used to call it, or we still call it, the triple diamond, right? It's design thinking plus delivery. So 3 diamonds: problem discovery, solution delivery. Then what? You need to like feedback loop it back to like the original business goal or the business KPI, the metric you try to impact, and actually see also if your customer experience improved. So that is running in the back of my mind. Every project I do, every initiative we start, whether it's designing the company, the leadership team, building features, helping product to focus on the right things, that is running in the back of my mind. And what I see also young designers do is like, first you follow the process step by step very rigorously. And as you grow and as you learn and as you build experience and also have that gut feel or that instinct for it, it becomes more natural and you do it instinctively more than, oh, where in the triple diamond are we? Are we here? And what do we need to do next? So that is running in my mind all the time.
Awesome. I love this triple diamond as a framework because probably most of designers have heard about double diamond, haven't heard about triple diamond. And also what resonates is that you've shared like the most important question to answer is why and do the discovery. And sometimes I notice that not all designers are involved into the discovery phase. And recently we had on this podcast Bezos, who have been running research at Slack and is teaching on Reforge right now. And he said that growth is everybody's job. I think discovery is also everybody's job. And you created the company, TheyDo, which is a fantastic name, also around this problem of customer centricity, of building user journey. Could you tell a bit more about the concept behind your product and why you landed on this particular problem to solve?
Yeah, and funny that you picked out the name of the company. It's related to this research problem that you just shared, right? It's when you understand what people do, you can understand why they're actually doing it. And it's not about like understanding data and measuring, oh, so many people did this. It's then understanding, okay, what they are saying they're doing, is it actually true? And that's where research comes in. So I think like it's a double-edged sword. It's not what they say, it's what they do. So you want to assess A, in the data, and B, qualitatively, is that matching what we actually think they are doing? So that's why the name. And that's also how we started the company, not from a research perspective, not thinking like, oh, discovery should be done better, but how can we be a systemic way of working for a large company? Because if you're a small company, like you can have a bunch of whiteboards, a spreadsheet, and maybe, something to manage a roadmap, and you're good. And we did that in the beginning as well. You don't need much tools. You don't need much overhead. You can be aligned, especially if you're in the same room. I mean, we are a remote company, so that has its own difficulties. But if you're in the same room, you don't need many tools to feel that you're connected, to know that you're aligned. And you also don't have many customers and many initial users to work with. So the set is small. But if the set is 20,000 employees and you have like 50 products and 5 brands, then it becomes a mess. And everyone has a different idea who the customer is, what is important, what we should be working on. And what you'll end up with is we have beautiful tools for analytics, so we exactly know where the insights are.
This episode is brought to you by Appcues, the platform that helps you design, deploy, and test captivating onboarding experiences in minutes, not weeks. Appcues created the Product Adoption Academy, which includes courses, templates, and examples to help you level up your product adoption, and you can use it entirely for free. Check out the 5-step growth flow review template, which I created to help companies connect growth hypotheses with behavioral patterns to uncover meaningful improvements. Find an example of Dropbox Onboarding inside and use this template to review any growth flows in your product. Get the template through the link appcues.com/growthmate.
And then we have great tools for prioritization and for delivery. And in a lot of organizations, we have even like fully agile our way through like the delivery trains, and we have like sprints and everything runs on time. But to go from insight to implementation, you can't just say like, oh, here's my insight, now we're going to build this. I mean, you might be lucky, but in reality, there's so much more to uncover there to really prioritize that. And what we've found is that no team has a good context to align all these stages, all these departments, because we have dashboards, we have whiteboards, we have all these different tools that have their own like siloed representation of a part of the data. But what connects it all, which is, and I mean, if you have a better idea, you're gonna tell me. This is a question I ask everyone I speak. Is like, what else than the customer journey brings both of these perspectives together? So you have the full context. And when we realized that, we also knew that there wasn't any solution out there beyond like mapping, and you could do journey mapping in many different tools, but actually like bring all the data together, start prioritizing and align and bring back the impact to the business in a meaningful way, visually, but also like tracking that across teams. It wasn't done. So we said, okay, let's build it, but not for our customers. We wanted to build it for ourselves because our team, we had consultants, we had designers, we had engineers. They needed a better method to work with our clients when we were doing an agency. We consulted many, many big companies. So we designed it for ourselves on a WordPress backend. It was very like V1, almost like it worked for us. And then our clients, who are still now customers, said, whoa, that thing you have, can you give us some access when you're gone? And can you also share it with that team? We're like, okay, here maybe is something bigger than actually helping ourselves. We might be able to help everyone. So that was the initial step towards like, let's build a product company and stop being a consulting firm.
This is awesome. And I've heard many times when this personal pain or an agency pain became an idea for the product. Even Mira, previously real-time board, started like that. If you remember or heard this story, like first there was a design agency, then there was a small group of people who wanted to create a visual whiteboarding platform just to work instead of a physical whiteboard. And this is how Mira appeared to the world. And I really loved your thesis on your website, which says that customer-obsessed organizations drive through change with journeys. It sounds very like strong. And could you give an example when this customer obsession or customer centricity drove that true change for you at TheyDo and maybe for some of your customers as well?
Maybe I'll give you an anti-example of like how it should not be done, of a project I was part of before starting the company. And that was in my agency days when I was a designer at one of the agencies here in Amsterdam. And we got a big project for Citizen M, for the hotels. And we had to do the e-commerce platform. This was before Shopify even existed. We had to build it on Magento, and like those were the days, right? But we had to do it, and it was a big budget, and there was like a beautiful assignment for us to build out this e-commerce platform for them. But it wouldn't allow us to do proper research, proper discovery. So we built the most fantastic, beautiful looking platform. If you know Citizen M, they have like the squares and like the cabinets all over, and everything is pretty like design led in that business, and it looks really good. So we mimicked that website. I still like when you look at my old Dribble portfolio, there's going to be screenshots all over. But
I want to find
design. Yeah, I'll share it with you, which is kind of cool. Dark mode, light mode, like, you know, when people weren't doing that, we were trying to do that and time it with the day you were in and where in the world you were. But we launched, we shipped, and crickets, like nothing happened. Turned out people didn't want to buy products from Citizen M. They were the occasional product buyers in the hotels, like the Golden Pineapple or the books or whatever, and they bought them. But it wasn't a market for their customers to consistently and repeatedly start purchasing products. Had we done research, we probably figured it out, but we didn't. So, and that was like such a bummer and such a annoying thing where that was also the moment where I said, okay, I've had it with this agency pressure life. Let's properly do it and leave. So that is actually the wrong way of doing it. But customer obsession, to answer your question specifically, I think everyone is tired of customer centricity. Like for years, we've been saying we are customer centric. And kind of we are, because we're thinking about the customer where we want to measure, we want to understand, we want to serve them. That's not new, but there's a huge execution gap in many businesses where on leadership level, we say like, yeah, we are customer centric. If you look at the annual statements, and we serve Fortune 500 businesses, right? If you look at any of their annual statements, customer centricity or customer success, like those are core values or core pillars in their strategic framework. But then when you look at the execution in the teams, everyone is running around in circles, right? We jokingly say like the only centricity you have is you're running around in circles. This tool points to that tool. This presentation says this, but it's contradicting that team where we have like 5 experiments running that we didn't even know were on the same homepage where different teams are not communicating. So we are not doing a good job to be customer centric in the organization. So, and we know that, and people know that. So even though it was a buzzword of the years, we started to move away from it, and we are landing on customer obsession because that clicks for people who truly care about changing the way they're doing business. They're working in their companies. So everyone is like fake customer centricity. Will read it and say like, that's not for me. But the people who are truly customer obsessed and want to make it work, they click with that. So that's how we're thinking about it and why it's there.
Awesome. And it makes me think about, like, I'm just curious, how would you then define this customer obsession or customer centricity, or how you could identify it looking at organization or looking at the team? For example, should I talk to customers every day to be enough user-centric, or should I have some sort of routine or something else? What are the maybe signals that show you that, all right, this team is customer-focused, centric, obsessed, whatever, but this team is not?
Yeah, so on the team level, it's pretty easy, right? It's usually just assessing how they work, right? Do they have discovery in their process? Do they talk to customers? Can they name their customers? Do they have anecdotes? Like, it's very easy to assess it on a team level, but I think what's more interesting to look at in the organization. So what we are seeing, companies that have all the way up to the C level put a priority in place of doing a customer-centric transformation, or are doing transformation work to put what we are now seeing the journey as the one thing to operate around. And that is usually a mandate that comes from the top. And then every team needs to fit into that structure. Now, this is not something you do overnight, but when that mandate is there, the need for a journey framework and a need for unifying all the metrics against that journey framework is actually happening, right? Brian Chesky posted the blueprint for the community, where the guest and the host experience are nicely aligned with their product, their policies, and then how the teams are actually like catered towards that. And that's an organizational design principle. Now, he is obviously the CEO of a very customer-centric, very customer-obsessed business, and he's sharing that. But there's many examples of public companies that are doing similar work. They are not so vocal about it, but when you ask about it, they pull up these kind of like end-to-end journeys, how they're linking their whole business together. And that is usually a sign of an organization that is doing it on a systemic level and starts to build their data, their pipelines, their reporting, all in line with the customer journey. And that is what we are looking for, if that is the case, if they are building towards that. Now, from the outside in looking, the easy signs are, do you have a chief customer officer? Do you have a chief experience officer? Are they vocal about it? So look at the Forresters or the Gartners, like, are they on stage or not? And those are some signals that you can use to look at it from the outside in.
Interesting. So I love these principles that we should start like also top down from like the leadership level, how we build this foundation, and bottom up, it's like probably similar traction, how people could leverage it day to day. So sometimes I noticed that there was a moment even in my career when I was talking to customers almost every day. And then at some point while I was transitioning to leadership role, I just realized for 2 months, I haven't been talking to customers. Like, I feel awful about that, honestly. But that was the job. I didn't have time for that. And maybe some companies have some interesting principles of like having certain amount of conversations with users, customers, user testings, inviting everybody, involving everybody, then this is also useful to complement it with the other like high-level user journey mapping. And have you seen an impact from that? Because, it's very difficult to quantify the impact of qualitative things and qualitative user research. And people are still asking, all right, if we invest into that, if we invest into this, how do we measure that? Like customer satisfaction is hard to measure, etc. But let's say companies are doing this transformation or like doing this whole work on building the user journey. Have you seen how it's landed them on some impactful results for the business even?
Yes. So the best companies, they do ask their leaders to meet with customers. Even the CEO, she will meet with customers. Obviously not as frequent as the people in product or in design. But that's what the best companies do, right? And they also make it a priority because we all have the same time, but it's like, where do you put your energy? But the qualitative anecdotes from those interactions can be very powerful, and it can even be transformative, right? They can be transformative. Like when Lego was doing, and this is not what we have seen, this is a public story, and maybe you've heard it, but when they were figuring out to crack open the market for, I think it was boys around age 14, they couldn't figure it out. But they had like all these beautiful designs. But when they went to one of the boys, and interviewed them in their home and in their room, they asked, like, what are you proud of? And he took a pair of sneakers with scratch marks, because that reminded him of like a kickflip he did on his skateboard. And he was so proud of it. It was the messy proudness of the process and not like the result. So they started to develop, I think, more sophisticated, more elaborative, more complicated Legos, and that hit off. So one insight can lead to a whole like business line for a company. So this is what an anecdote can do. But what we are seeing our customers do is that you want to be specific where to look. And I think that is the question a lot of organizations have. You can talk to any customer, you can uncover any problem, but you need to understand where to look for what is actually impacting your business. So turning those qualitative research insights into quantitative or quantifiable opportunities where you say, like, this is probably an area to invest. That's actually what we've been trying to do and actually are doing successfully, where companies go through, okay, we have all that unstructured data. We have it lying around. We have support calls. We have our VOC program. We have survey responses. We have huge transcripts of research. We have notes in Miro. Like, all of it is all over the place, but we don't have the capacity to make sense of it. So that's the beauty of what we're now seeing with all these AI capabilities. But this is what we're doing with journey mining. Take it all in, but then build not only your journey maps from it, but also understand, hey, this pain point has a higher severity score than the other, because like here's like 50 observations we took from all these different sources. So this is a pain point. And in the context of the journey, it sits here. And then you go to your discovery team. It's like, okay, what are we going to do about it? So that unlock, turning like anecdotal qualitative feedback into quantifiable data you can actually compare, is a huge step forward to actually work with qualitative data at scale, which is something that truly unlocks this focus on where to look for customers. Because the Lego example is nice. I wasn't part of that team, so I can't tell you if they also research like for 5 or 10 million euros in the wrong direction. I don't know, but this is a very compelling argument to see companies now take this on as data for their teams to act on the right things first.
It reminds me about the other thing we have discussed on this podcast, that user research or discovery is a decision-making tool. And basically, when your platform helps companies to zoom out and look at this journey from a zoomed out perspective, it helps them prioritize faster and better these particular things that they need to invest in, and be customer-centric versus opinionated, just
right.
Gut feeling opinionated, as sometimes it happens with prioritization, even at scale. If you have a mess of data, you cannot rely on it. You rely on your gut. And unfortunately, sometimes it's not the right priority. So this is very interesting. And I also want to talk about your story at TheyDo, because I think it's also very interesting from the growth perspective, from the startup perspective, how you managed to grow so fast and recently closed Series B funding. Congrats with that. It's a great milestone. And I always like to ask people like you who have passed through already quite a significant number of steps to get where you are today, what were maybe top 3 contributors to this growth so far? If something comes to your mind, like these particular changes or decisions led you to where you are today as a company.
Yeah, sure. Let's see if I can get to 3, right? You have to stop me when I'm digressing. But like, sure. I'll take a few examples. Like early on, we made a non-conscious decision to focus on enterprise because those were our clients we had. That was the initial solution we built. And before we knew it, we had companies like NCR and Johnson & Johnson finding us, liking the product, and then wanted to do a deal with us. So we had to okay, how do we do contracting, all of that? But we figured it out, obviously. So we were enterprise from day one, which is pretty unusual. You would normally go to maybe a PLG motion and figure out some early stage companies as your customers. But we were focused on enterprise. But we didn't know really, how this all played together. So that was an unconscious decision, but I think it was the right one we took. But it also required us to build heavy stuff early on, like security, access controls, and making sure that we had SSO and all of that you would typically do later. So it was a curse and a blessing because it also distracted us a little bit from the core of the product. So that is one thing, but it's now starting to compound and pay off, right? So in one way, we were lucky. In another way, we were sticking to what we believed we're solving for. We didn't have the context of maybe a serial entrepreneur would have in the beginning. So if I would advise my younger self, that would be a way more conscious decision. We could have still taken enterprise as the first focus, but maybe we've done it later. But because we did that, the second thing that we realized that when we had first we had a trial on the website when we started, 14-day trial, but realized this systemic change way of working, you can't prove that in 14 days, right? So that was also a mistake we made early on. And then we started to experiment with freemium. But what we also said was, well, we're not going to give away all our features. So let's then add a few things behind the paywall, but you can still unlock those for 14 days, which is kind of like what we would call a reverse trial. So by figuring that piece out early on, we were very confident to at some point remove credit card plans from our website rather than say let's take it out and we'll see what happens. So that focus gave us superpowers and say, we're going to go for one ideal customer profile. We're going to go for the enterprise. We're going to go for the global customer experience team. And they have this problem. So if they have this problem, let's help them find us when they have the problem. When I'm going to search for solutions. And that inbound funnel, that motion we build, that is, I think, what made us so successful, because instead of building a top-down sales motion, which we are now investing in, we have the inbound. It's not really PLG because it's not people inviting other people and there's a growth loop in there, but it is a product loop that produces qualified accounts where there's multiple people collaborating around these journeys, getting value initially, saying this is different. We love it. Oh, by the way, you need to talk to my boss. You need to talk to the bigger group because this is important for us to solve. Can you help us? So those hand raisers come to us. And now, because we have that motion, outbound always works, right? I mean, of course, you have to invest in outbound today is not what it was a few years ago, but building that on top of it, everyone says it's way easier than if you have a sales-led motion to go and do a freemium or a product-led motion. So I think those things together were on the business side, good innovations that we did early on that we're now starting to see the benefits from.
This is interesting, set of decisions from the business perspective and quite bold decisions, brave decisions, even go into enterprise from day one is an interesting angle. If we are talking about your product itself or the experience side of things, you mentioned innovations. What were these elements that you think could help you to stood out on the competitors landscape? For example, your product, if I look at that, it looks quite good in terms of quality, even with this complexity, even with this positioning to enterprise. Maybe this is your differentiator from the user experience perspective. So is there anything you have done early on that you think contributed to that growth?
Yes. Well, thank you. Design and intuitive design, simplicity is very important. And to be honest, I don't think we're there yet. Like, we can make it so much more simple and delightful to use.
Yeah.
But I think, like, I will always say that. If you interview me 10 years from now, I'll still keep saying that. But that's a big push from us. And also, obviously, as I'm a designer and Charles an engineer and Martin's a strategist, like, that is in our DNA. That's how we started the company, to truly build it for the users, for the people who are using it in their day-to-day. That was always our philosophy. But it's because they're in a big company and everyone wants to participate in journey management that we had to build like pretty advanced things on top of that. So to keep that balance, that's important. But I'll give you a few examples. The innovation we did early on, what set us off, was what we call opportunity prioritization. So everyone can map a journey. There's many tools to map out journeys, and you can, you can probably list 10 where you can do that. But then you have like a few journeys mapped out. Starting to connect the dots is impossible in most of these tools. So what we figured is like, we don't only want to connect the dots across these journeys, but you have, say, an insight. Okay, people experience frustration when they have to wait for the product to arrive and they're tapping in the dark, right? That could be that is an insight that's relevant for the purchase journey, for the churn journeys, right? Because if people like get a crappy experience in the beginning, it will have an impact on a later stage. So that single insight might be relevant for multiple journeys. So we started to build a building block system so that insight can be linked across these journeys. And then we did the same with opportunities that basically are cluster of insights in the context of a journey. Here's my opportunity. But if they are connected to multiple journeys, well, the weight of the opportunity, the impact and the reach it has becomes bigger. So seeing that prioritization matrix and being able to slice and dice it based on how you are operating was a huge unlock for teams who already had journeys. They mapped it all out. So bring that into our product and being able to see all these opportunities, to go back to their business stakeholders and say, look, we've been thinking wrong about our priorities on what we're going to ship, because here's actually where the value is. And that unlock was huge for teams that couldn't get that done on a journey mapping. So that was the first innovation we did. I can tell you about more if you want to, but like maybe I'll pause here.
Nice. And it sounds like, are you using your own product as a team, as a company?
Of course. Yeah, we are.
This is what helps you uncover these opportunities, meaning like opportunities for a product.
Yes.
It feels like if you wouldn't use your product, or if it would be another product, it would be way harder to uncover these things. Because if you are working with that as a team, maybe you've noticed that, yeah, maybe if it would work like that, if we could uncover opportunities and highlight them and make them more noticeable, we could ship it to customers as well. I think this is an interesting benefit of everyone who has this chance to use the product that you are creating for customers and uncover these things there. All right. And maybe like just talking to you these days, you're already at your growth phase. Is there anything you wish you knew earlier that you would advise to other people who are just in the beginning of their startup journey or founder's journey when it comes to building the product like yours in a similar landscape, in like a B2B SaaS landscape? Is there anything you would advise to this group?
Yeah, so the biggest mistake I think I made as a design leader was to overthink the experience of some of the basics that the platform offers. So trying to reinvent the wheel is really cool, like especially early on, we were like, oh my God, we're going to solve this problem. I have so many ideas in my head. Let's do this and try that. And so what we got when we didn't invest, for instance, in a design system early on, because we were like so busy, like get the first version right and ship and try and test, we built 6 or 7 versions of similar things. Popover menus, bulk editing things, like basic list views, and they were built from the ground up over and over again. So it sounds like a rookie mistake, and it is, but it's really hard to keep yourself at bay and say, no, let's just use the very basic rudimentary way of doing it, like list, table, filters, like don't overthink it. And we were in the beginning too over-indexing on usability, simplicity, and design, that we did it on a local maximum scale, right? This feature looked really good, and then we did this feature and it looked really good, but like there were some disconnects in usability and a disconnect in UX, and I think like I didn't oversee what building a true enterprise solution would mean. early on. Now I know, and now I know better. And we still have some UX depth on that today as a platform, which we need to like polish out. And we're doing that, but that hurts my eyes. And it's like, I wish I could go back in time and like start with the basics and do it really simply rather than to do it very polished.
Interesting. So if I summarize your advice, it's like something to connected to building the foundations, but making sure these foundations work well. So to make sure that the fundamental flows or experiences are good enough, and then you can move forward and just polish it later, but at the same time making sure that fundamentals are already like established and not skipping it and postponing it for the later better times.
Yeah, and the other thing on that, and that's more like the complexity of building an enterprise solution, is that if you think about the three diamonds, right, the three stages of the triple diamond, each of them, if you look at the technology landscape today, has different tools that fit onto like different parts of the diamond. They're really good, but they're point solutions. So if you want to be a systemic platform that puts the journey in the middle of all of that, the dilemma is, are you going to go a mile wide and an inch deep, or are you going to go a mile deep and an inch wide? And how do you balance that? And I think we underestimated how big of a lift it would be to do everything really well. And therefore, sometimes we were working on going a mile deep here and an inch wide there, right, rather than be consistently executing on going deep step by step rather than to do it all at once. So I think it's easy to get distracted with all the opportunities that are coming to you when you have something that works, and containing that and making sure that you have the good way to prioritize yourself can be a huge distraction. And I think that is another thing to watch out for, and to really keep it simple and to do step by step rather than to do 5 things at once with a small team.
Yeah, this is interesting. And it reminds me of my question that I wanted to ask you at the end as well. What are the current challenges that you're facing as a company these days? Maybe it's connected to what you've just shared with this prioritizing the effort. You still have probably a relatively small team. How many people, by the way, do you have at this point?
So by the time we were recording, we're 84 people in the company.
Okay. It's already like a bunch of people. Anyways, like prioritization is a challenge for companies like at all the stages. So maybe some other challenges that you're currently facing with growth or with product development.
Yeah, I'll speak about a few, and there's always challenges, right? It's never done. I think for us, we are a remote company, so we invested in our people team early on. We built a little bit over-the-top systems in the beginning, but they are paying off because we invested in talent acquisition, talent onboarding journeys, and really making sure that we have a good program for finding the best people in the world, but also making sure that remote onboarding and feeling the culture and being part of it is something that we could actually transfer. So that the amount of people we're adding obviously is still a challenge, and it's an opportunity to really do it right and to keep investing in it, right? It's never done, and making sure that we're a 20-person company with different challenges than we're 80-person, and maybe when we're 800, we have different challenges. So thinking that through is always on my mind, which is basically like designing the business, right? How does the business work as a whole, as a cohesive whole? So that's one thing. The other challenge, because we're enterprise, is that even though we have the best companies in the world on our roster, right? From the largest Fortune 500 companies, from Johnson & Johnson to NCR to Ford, like they're all seeing the benefits, but getting them to help us build the use cases and be like vocal about their results, that takes time. It really takes time to make sure they're seeing the impact on a systemic level on the business. And unlike maybe if you're serving early stage companies where, you know, you're directly working with the founders and they're seeing impact of your solution directly and they want to do a use case with you so the rest of the world can see it. For us, like getting into the mainstream of these large companies and showing that we're a trustworthy solution that everyone is benefiting from visually also to the rest of the world, that is a huge challenge, because for them to speak up and get behind our company, behind closed doors, they're doing it, and they're behind closed doors talking to each other and supporting each other. And we have this beautiful network of leaders in these companies that are connecting. But like getting that to the public, like that takes time. And sometimes that's frustrating, right? You want to say like, wow, look at that result. Can we share it? And legal won't allow it, right? Like, okay. When do we do it? So that is a challenge on its own, I think, if you're serving an enterprise, but that's with time, we'll overcome it. And I think the other thing is alignment as we grow. Like we are, to your point, where we are building our company around our journeys, but the enterprise is more a stable company, right? It's more consistent. For us, we're going through many iterations internally, and changes is obviously constant, but also like very rapid. So these journeys evolve way faster than they would at our customers. So that is another challenge to maintain, and seeing that evolve is a curse and a blessing as we're dogfooding our own product.
Yeah, it's understandable. And when it comes to thinking of product growth, like especially through the lens that you're an enterprise-focused company, what parts of that flow are most challenging for you? Like, is it activation part, or engagement, or like conversion, or etc.? Because it's way different probably from like typical POG situation that I'm usually discussing here. But what part is most challenging at this moment for you?
So for like the PLG audience and the guests you had, it's not that different, right? Our freemium is designed in that way to help the individual contributors in CX, in UX, in product, and design that are working with journeys day to day to instantly see the value, right? And that was a huge challenge in the beginning when, we're a small team and we couldn't truly invest in onboarding. And the aha moment was like seeing that opportunities that I talked about, and seeing that like on a 2x2 and understanding how to connect the journeys. But you need the journeys for that, and you need to map it out for that, and you need to build it all in TheyDo. So by doing journey mining, just taking all your unstructured data, revealing the journeys, and seeing that opportunity, we are able to decrease that like aha moment to get it in the first session rather than in the first 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So we're still thinking about the same things as you would in a PLG context, right? New user creates an account. Okay, and we qualify, right? And we look for obviously enterprise customers. So is it an enterprise account? And we have a whole qualification engine running on the org creator. But then we wait, and then we look at like, are they inviting people? Are they also activating? Are they building a journey? Are they reaching the activation, which is like having an opportunity? Do they get to the aha moment, seeing the opportunity matrix, right? And we track that, and we look at how people are going through that. And if they do all of this, well, then it's a product qualified account. And then marketing says, yes, they're also qualified from our end. And then typically we wait, because then they raise their hand and say, look, we want to talk. But if some of these things are not there, then our activation team comes in, right? We have a SDR team who are like product specialists, and they say, hey, look, we see you have done this, but have you tried that? And they nudge people to say, hey, what if you do that? And from there, obviously, we strike up the conversation. So much of those principles and the ways of thinking about like the initial journey people have with us is very similar to what maybe a PLG company would do. But then, because it's a strategic sell for many organizations or a strategic platform they're buying, then we need to go into the buying journey for them and understand like, how do you buy? What is a useful thing to you? How important is it? Why would TheyDo be a solution? Why is it important right now? And how do we actually help you to see the value? Should we do a POC? And then you go into like true enterprise selling and getting to the value for the stakeholders. But the beginning is much the same.
Yeah. It really reminds me of like a combination of POG plus sales-led and product-led sales when there are hand raisers, etc. And probably you have this combination of self-serve onboarding and high-touch onboarding for PQAs, like for people who are qualified. You're reaching out to them sometimes proactively and doing some demos with a more like personalized human-facing approach, right?
Yeah, so the demo, like ideally people experience the product themselves, but like the buyers, the decision makers, they're usually not in the product, right? So by the time we get to them, we've probably demoed to 3, 4, 5 teams, and we've built a specific demo for them, right? How they could operationalize their journey management. So it's always custom. It's never, oh, here's how the features work. That's like the flyover demo that our SDR or our sales team does in the initial like conversation. Oh, let me show you quickly how this works, just to get a flavor. But to have a true meeting on what the product can do, we always ask for sample data. We help build a little model in TheyDo, using that to structure that a little bit. And that is what we do with even in our pre-sales activities. And once the customer actually signs the contract, then onboarding starts. And then they have a whole like 12 months rollout. And obviously we want to get to the value as soon as we can, ideally on the first day. But sometimes for them, it is investing in a journey model. So they have to build it and they want to do it properly. So that's when we coach them. But some are saying, oh, we have a whole bunch of unstructured data. We just need to reveal the journeys, start prioritizing against NPS, CSAT, or whatever is the metric on CX for them. And we can do that pretty fast. So it really depends on also on what level of the organization we're doing this. So that is the personal part. We have also an academy where you can do self-learning and certification. But ideally, all the people that are using TheyDo in their day-to-day, in their week-to-week, they are doing it in the products with our onboarding, with our self-serve onboarding, with our content, with our videos by themselves. And many of them are successful.
Interesting. Yeah, it reminds me, it shows how complex it is. Like, first of all, I've just shared the post. You've seen that, like, about holistic user onboarding. And I'm talking just about self-serve user onboarding there. Like, it collects all these parts from, like, you reminded that it's even before Google search or ads. It's about their intrinsic motivation and, like, noticing content connected to their problem to solve. Then there is like Google search ads, whatever platform you're using. Then there is a website. Then there is the sign up flow. Then there is first session. Then there is path to aha moment. Then there is a habit moment. And these 6 steps or even more can take several months, even in self-serve product or in a very complex product. It can take like literally 3 to 4 months. But after that, you've mentioned that the paid customer onboarding starts. If it's an organization, you need to do a lot of manual things, a lot of hands-on human touch onboarding for people who converted. And it's like way more complex, and it's another process and another journey. Yeah, thank you for sharing that aspect. It's like always top of my mind, this activation and user onboarding. It was interesting to learn about that from you. And before we jump off, as a tradition for this podcast, we have this lightning round when I ask you some simple questions, maybe not that simple, but just answer whatever comes to your mind. You've mentioned about building the team, remote culture, and I'm curious, what is maybe your favorite ritual that helps you build a thriving team culture in a startup?
Oh, that's a big one. I'll give you a very specific example. We have our core values, obviously, but we have been building practices around them very specifically. So one of the core values, for instance, is cloaks off. So it's our way of being transparent, but also building a culture of trust. Because I want to speak up if something doesn't feel right or isn't right, and I don't want to hold it back. Right? That's the idea behind it. But the way we use it is interesting, where we say like, "Hey, Kate, cloaks off." So giving you a heads up, like I'm going to throw a hand grenade to you, and now I'm going to say something you might not like, or you might take as criticism. So using that principle, say like cloaks off, ... will prepare people for like, oh, now something serious is coming, or now something maybe unexpected or frustration is coming. And that's a way we instill this and help our people to use something less emotional to put in between each other. So like, hey, cloaks off. And then that is an accepted way of saying like, I really don't like this, or I think you're wrong, or you're an idiot, but in a nice way. So yeah, that helps.
Wow, this is an interesting one. I can imagine that it's work and the teamwork is not always that nice, as we are talking on this podcast. And you need to find a way how to deliver this critical feedback sometimes, and find an ethical or like a polite way, or just a human way to do that. So it's interesting ritual. All right. As we are talking here about user experience as well, in addition to product growth, and you are coming from design background, I want to ask you, what is a high quality experience that you've recently interacted with? It can be any product, any software that you really enjoyed.
Text Expander. Do you know what a product is? Have you heard of that?
No, not really.
Picked it up in some random podcast. I was like, okay, this is the one I want to use. So what it does is like, I use a lot of small things in my work, like my Calendly link, for instance. Like if someone needs to meet with me, like that Calendly link needs to be somewhere. So but I'm not always on email, right? Where you can do shortcuts. So Text Expander is like an overlay shortcut tool for your entire system. So I put in all the shortcuts of things I use a lot, including the registration number of my daughter or my son and the passport number of my wife. And all of those little things are there. So now I have my shortcuts for everything. And the product looks ugly. It's like Appcues is like ridiculously designed. It looks like Winamp, if you still know what that is. But it works. It works everywhere, including your phone keyboard. So I think like that product is amazing. It's super ugly, but I'm happy to pay a few bucks for it. And that's a great experience. It just works. It's simple. And I have all my shortcuts with that. Small
this is super cool. It sounds like it's solving a real problem that I also have. I have notes and I have 1,000 of notes there. I cannot find anything. I have 1,000,000 of tabs and sometimes I need just a calendar link. But I wish these products would have also a great user interface and user experience. Maybe it's an opportunity for someone else on the market to create a competitor with just more exceptional UX and win in this category.
No, it's fun. Like actually, like I use it also when I have like I interview many people, right? 50% of my time is recruiting right now, talking to people, and different roles have different set of questions I ask. So if I hit my shortcut, like, I don't know, product interview, and then 5 questions pop up that I always ask, so I have them top of mind. So all those little things, they matter a lot. So yeah, sorry, digress, but I love that.
We'll check this out. We talked a lot about different things from like transitioning from designer to founder, building the company, enterprise-led, user-obsessed culture. Any resources or books or articles or newsletters that you would recommend to the audience related to the topics that we discussed today?
So the book on journeys I love most is actually, the title is misleading. It's called Demand-Side Sales. I don't know if you've heard of it, from Bob Musta. He's the guy who, together with Clayton Christensen, created Jobs to Be Done framework. But his book, Demand-Side Sales, talks about like the whole decision-making journey people go through. To your point, like you mentioned, like the onboarding starts on the moment people see the ad, but it's way before that, right? You're like, you have a problem, you feel like you have back pain. In his book, he talks about mattress company, but you don't do anything. But then you like wake up for the 5th time with the back pain. You're like, okay, today is the day I'm going to buy a new mattress. So you switch from passive looking to active looking. And that's a trigger to go on Google and to find a better mattress, for instance. So understanding that whole journey from that perspective, like I give it away to everyone who works at the company. I recommend it to everyone. But like that is the simplest book on why journeys matter and why context matters and how to use it that I've ever read.
Awesome. We will attach it to the description. And the last question, as growth mates, is something beyond just myself. It's a community of people. I'm always curious to meet new folks. And if there are anyone who you would like to see on this show one day, who would you recommend?
I'll recommend a few. I think like the obvious one is Brian Balfour, right? I don't think you had him on the show yet. So the master of growth, right? So that's obviously huge inspiration. But I think who's doing phenomenal work on like bringing products back to reality on things like North Star metric is John Cutler, who I know well, and I think he's a fantastic mind to pick his brain on this podcast, not on growth, but generally on like making things simple and palpable and working together on these topics. So that's another one. And person I'm inspired by lately is he's called Mark Stone. He's the VP Analytics at ClickUp, and he's done tremendous work on building a growth engine and making sure that company can handle so much data. And he's also running AI and experimentation, or not experimentation itself, but I'm sure he has a very good set of nuggets for you if you would be able to interview him. So Mark Stone from ClickUp would be someone I would love to see here as well.
Oh, thank you so much for mentioning these folks. And thank you for joining. It's been a very nice conversation, and hope you also enjoyed that. Yeah.
Thanks, Kate. It was my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the show on growthmates.club and get free playbook with frameworks and insights. If you find this valuable, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and subscribe to the show on your favorite platforms to get new episodes. Let's keep growing together.